Welcome back, future NGO leaders, to Week 7 of our Master's Program Explainer. We've spent the previous weeks digging deep into strategy and finance, but today we're going to tackle the most complex yet absolutely vital component of any mission-driven organization: its people. This sector is notoriously tough. It's known for high burnout rates and carrying an immense emotional tax. And that is exactly why mastering human resource management is just non-negotiable if you want your programs to survive in the long run.
So here's a massive question for you to chew on right out of the gate. How exactly do you manage people when your ultimate metric is the mission and not just making a profit? Think about it. Unlike corporate HR, you can't simply dangle quarterly earnings, stock options, or profit margins to motivate your team. You're dealing with a workforce that's inherently driven by their values, by a deep calling, and by this visceral desire to make a tangible impact on the world. It completely shifts the entire paradigm of traditional management.
And right here is where we see the core contrasts between the sectors. In nonprofits, we measure our success by the impact we have on human lives. So we're looking at qualitative indicators. Things like, are we restoring dignity to refugees? Are we genuinely improving community health outcomes? We aren't just calculating a financial return on equity. Our incentives aren't usually monetary bonuses. They're opportunities for professional development and fostering this daily profound alignment with the organization's overarching vision. To break this all down, today's syllabus is built around a strategic human resource management framework, covering 5 areas: workforce planning and roles, recruitment, selection and pay, performance management and well-being, strategic volunteer management, and finally, international and cultural dynamics.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, workforce planning and roles. Let's look at the structural foundation of our human resources.
Before you even think about posting a job description, you've got to strategically figure out what you actually need. It's simply not enough to just harness the time and energy of people who desperately want to serve. You have to thoughtfully analyze your current team, spot the talent gaps, and use concrete data to make calculated decisions. If you hire reactively, just bringing on whoever happens to be available rather than who you actually need, you risk massive mission creep that will ultimately dilute your impact.
So NGO leadership has to continuously solve what we call the human resource mix to guarantee consistent, high-quality service delivery. Will your programs be run by full-time employees, part-time staff, or maybe volunteer labor? And crucially, how are you navigating the complex dynamics between expatriate staff deployed from headquarters and the localized national staff who hold all that critical community trust? Getting this mix right is like solving a giant puzzle, and it's foundational, especially with funders demanding more rigorous accountability than ever before.
Moving right along to Section 2, recruitment, selection, and pay. Once we know the roles, how do we find the right people and pay them equitably?
It's really fascinating when you look at the empirical data. Take a look at these numbers from Kenyan international NGOs. They are utilizing rigorous selection methods, like structured interviews and very specific skill tests, significantly more than standard corporate companies in the UK. Why is that? Well, NGOs might not always be able to offer top-tier corporate salaries, but they are incredibly sophisticated in how they assess a candidate's potential and values. Because honestly, the cost of a bad hire in a fragile, high-stakes humanitarian setting, it is absolutely disastrous.
Now, compensation brings up a really heated debate in our field. On one hand, donors typically want every single penny going directly to the beneficiaries. But on the other hand, if NGOs want to be vital, effective components of civil society, they have to attract enterprise-minded, qualified professionals. And you can't rely solely on unpaid altruism for that. Plus, as employers, we have a strict duty of care. If we systemically underpay our staff, we're risking their financial well-being and pretty much inviting burnout or even corruption right through the front door.
To tackle internal equity, this brilliant case study from an LGBTQ-friendly nonprofit provides a really clear ethical roadmap for structuring fair compensation. They hit the ethical dilemma of wage gaps head-on. Pay special attention to Step 4, filtering underpaid groups out of the salary-setting data. This is such a smart tactic to correct historical biases instead of just passively perpetuating them. When you manage compensation with the kind of transparency you see in Step 5, it builds an immense amount of trust and solidarity within your team.
Okay, on to Section 3, performance management and well-being. Let's talk about how to support and evaluate our staff once they're actually on the job. Performance management isn't just about handing out a report card. Actually, it's not really about grades at all. It serves strategic, administrative, and developmental purposes to align everyone's behavior with the organization's goals. Think about it practically. If a talented field worker's performance suddenly takes a nosedive, robust administrative systems help us figure out why.
Do they just need some technical training to boost their skills? Or are they maybe suffering from secondary trauma from their fieldwork, which means they need immediate psychosocial support? The behavioral economist Dan Ariely hit the nail on the head when he said, if we want to change what they care about, we should change what we measure. You literally get exactly what you measure. NGOs have to be hypervigilant here. If you're evaluating a social worker strictly on the sheer volume of clients they process every hour, you might unintentionally destroy the actual quality of care they're providing. Your metrics absolutely must match your mission. No exceptions.
And right alongside performance, we have to aggressively protect staff well-being. Cultivating genuine camaraderie, trust, and respect isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a non-negotiable management strategy. This isn't just about being friendly around the office. True camaraderie acts as a crucial psychological buffer against the intense stress of NGO work. Without mutual trust and structured support, organizations quickly fracture into destructive little factions, and the very people we rely on to help others will just collapse under the weight of it all.
Section 4. Strategic Volunteer Management. Let's shift our focus to the absolute lifeblood of so many nonprofits, our volunteers.
Since volunteers are there entirely by choice, you've got to use the AMO model to keep them coming back. AMO stands for Ability, Motivation, and Opportunities. You need to continually reinforce their ability by giving them the right training. You fuel their motivation by making sure there's a strong connection to the meaning of the work. And you provide opportunities by cultivating a really inclusive, welcoming environment. If a volunteer stops showing up, I guarantee you it is almost always a management failure in one of these three areas.
Looking at this step-by-step management cycle really proves a crucial point. Volunteers are absolutely not free labor. From designing clear roles in Step 2 to strategic recruitment, all the way through to onboarding and ongoing supervision, this whole cycle takes deliberate investment. You have to train volunteers just as rigorously as your paid staff and recognize their contributions constantly. Doing this the right way requires dedicated budget lines and serious, dedicated staff time.
And finally, Section 5. International and Cultural Dynamics. Let's look at the global reality of managing relationships across borders and distinct cultures.
One of the biggest challenges for international NGOs is bridging this massive divide between headquarters and the field. The bureaucratic, protocol-driven culture of HQ often directly clashes with the urgent, fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants reality of the field offices. Let's be real here. You'll often have staff in the capital city drafting 50-page procurement manuals, while the team on the ground is literally trying to source emergency supplies in the middle of a blackout. Bridging that operational gap is an essential skill for any global manager.
These cultural disconnects and the misunderstood roles between boards, directors, and volunteers are a recipe for destructive internal conflict. But even more importantly, this operational friction is a massive safeguarding risk. When reporting lines get blurred and communication breaks down, it creates a breeding ground for exploitation and abuse. As a manager, you have to proactively spot these tension points and diffuse them through incredibly clear, honest communication and strict safeguarding protocols.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative question to ponder as you step into your NGO management careers. Will you invest as much in your people as you do in your mission? We spend so much energy designing incredible programs to save the world, but if our internal systems, our recruitment, our pay equity, our safeguarding are broken, the mission is going to fail anyway. Thank you so much for diving into these complex issues with me today, and I will catch you in the next explainer.